we were cut off. So there has been an enormous effort on the part of the government to secure additional supplies, because we need to get some 500,000 vaccines available to our health officials so they can vaccinate all of our people, the adult Guyanese. What has happened so far is we have been scouring all the suppliers, because as I said before, the developed world is not making supplies available to us. And that is why at the United Nations and even CARICOM, a lot of our leaders have been talking about a vaccine apartheid, that it seems as though poor countries of the world have to wait until the developed world gets vaccinated. We can't wait. That is why we've been exploring. Our people are just as important, all of these sources. And we have been successful so far because we have had a large share of our population vaccinated. So we have just paid $36,000 as a down payment to the African Union. They said they can secure about 150,000 of the Johnson & Johnson single shot vaccine for us. We hope that that will come true. We're working with some big pharmaceutical companies in Europe. We're still exploring the Sputnik vaccine, and the Sinopharm has just contacted us again. So we're in discussions. So it is not an easy thing, and instead of griping as usual, the opposition, they should be helpful to the effort, because it's the safety of every Guyanese, including their supporters, that is at stake here. So they should really be working with us, but they sit on the sidelines and gripe. They sit on the sidelines and snipe. It's about the flooding, now it's about vaccine, it's about something else. So I want to assure Guyanese that we're taking all steps necessary to get the supplies in and to have people vaccinated, including the second dose of the Sputnik vaccine.
Dr. Jagdeo, your administration, the administration that you were part of, the PPP-led administration, has been making steps forward. There have been some dissatisfactions in parts of society, as much as there is not plausible evidence as to the reason. Just like the opposition would come up with things that don't make sense. How or what do you say to individuals who continue to be misled by the opposition? You've had cases that individuals put out voice notes and messages out there to suggest that the vaccine will affect people in a negative manner, and those persons are directly tied to the opposition. One will ask, why would a person want to harm their supporters, the people who keep them alive, the people who come out and show their colors for them? What would you like to see happen, or your government is willing to do, to see a change in the dynamics of politics in this country? Because the opposition actions directly affects, at present, mostly its supporters.
Yes, it is the only politics that they agree or they subscribe to is negative politics. They have very few positive achievements in APNU AFC, historically and in the last 5 years. If you look, I can trace the decline in the social sector, economic sector, in terms of the rights of our people in both periods that PNC was in office. So when you have very few positive achievements to campaign on or to mobilize people around, your only choice is to create a sense of unease in them. Never mind what you say will harm them physically, like in the case of vaccine, or deny them opportunities for the future upliftment, like in the case of the scholarships, where they're opposed to people getting scholarships now. That doesn't matter to APNU AFC. What matters to them is creating a sense of unease, dissatisfaction with the government. So that will redound to them politically. If people are uneasy, dissatisfied, then they will vote for you. Because you can't say vote for me because I have solved the following problems for you when I was in office. And they had a long period in office, 5 plus 28 years. And so I expect more of this. I expect more of this. It's misdirection and outright lying or spreading falsehoods. So yesterday all day long, they were saying, oh, the government increased the tax on soap and detergents. The leader of the opposition issued a statement, and he's so concerned about this increase by the government and how the government is callous to increase taxes on soap. Now, the fact of the matter is that the common external tariff that is part of the free trade agreement in CARICOM is a tax that was agreed to by all member states to protect the free trade area. If you want to adjust it, you have to go through a mechanism of CARICOM. So if any regional supplier can meet the market demand, then they would not give a waiver for the adjustment of the common external tariff. If there is a period when a regional supplier cannot meet the regional demand, then they give that waiver. APNU unilaterally removed the CET, contrary to the agreement that they signed, that we have been part of for all these years in CARICOM. Unilaterally reduced it to zero, the tax on soap. So Dominica complained to the region, right, and quoted, which is when the ministers meet across the region, they said the tax, the common external tariff, must be put back in place for soap. Not Guyana increase the tax, but restore the common external tariff. And if this goes to the CCJ, then we will lose the case, like we did with the soft drink case. Remember the so-called environmental tax that APNU ended up paying out a large sum of money on. We had over $6 million US in compensation. So that is a function of being in the free trade area. Now they're saying we increase, PPP is so callous to increase the tax on soap. And that comes from Harman. Harman sat there. He was in the government that put a tax now to collect revenue. We don't need the revenue from the tax on soap, really, because we've given up more than that. We gave back 40 billion in taxes that they had put on people. So Harman now shedding crocodile tears now, like he did with the mangrove. He is known for shedding crocodile tears because they just came out of government. His government introduced 200 new taxes and fees from drainage and irrigation fees for the farmers to move it from $3,000 per year to $15,000 per year. Bankrupting many of the farmers. Farming became, under APNU, something that you could not do because it's a marginal activity. All the fees for every business or government. I remember one where if you were vending with a vehicle, your fee under the PPP was $12,000 per year. It went to $65,000 under APNU. That was the magnitude of the increase, 500%. They put VAT on baby diapers, on electricity, on water, on about 20 food items, on building material, on interior travel. All of those things they put taxes on, and then now he complains about the GRA now reintroducing, because there's a CARICOM decision to reintroduce the common external tariff on soap. This is crocodile tears he's shedding, because they have a track record on increasing taxes to poor people. Now, I'm saying this because I'm aware also at my press conference, I know cost of living has gone up. But cost of living has gone up not because of increased taxes like they did. Cost of living has gone up because of external factors. The fact is that because of COVID, many people are not producing items abroad. So there's a global demand has grown. So the price of the items have gone up. Steels, almost everything that you can think of. Foodstuff as well as building material. And then freight, moving from like $2,500 per container to nearly $10,000 per container US dollars coming from China. Unbelievable, it gets passed on. So we are aware of that and we hope to mitigate it over time. But that is the reason why cost of living, not because of government action. They were extremely lucky. The moment when we were in office in 2014, the price of oil was $120 a barrel to generate electricity. Soon as they got into office in 2015, it fell to $28 a barrel from $120. We saved $350 million US dollars per year. They never passed it on to people. So they have a track record. So Harman now issues a press release shedding crocodile tears again about the 40% VAT on 40% common external tariff. And by the way, they had already drafted when by 2018 the order to restore it. They had already drafted it, but when they were busy stealing the elections in the last 2 years, they didn't have time to focus on that. So this is how the duplicity, the shedding of crocodile tears, misleading people, they build a campaign around it. Look at the children's grant. So Harman and the others removed the $10,000 per child for public school kids, and that cost $1.6 billion. They said they couldn't afford it, but they ended up increasing food in government by more than $1.6 billion a year. So we have, in the last budget, we restored it and we increased it to $15,000. So that's about $2.something billion, 2.6, $2.7 billion. Plus we increased the school uniform grant, voucher grant, to $4,000. So before school opens in September, we are hoping that every public school child will get $19,000 from the government. Every school child before school opens in September, we are hoping will get that. So all, including their supporters, because we don't discriminate again in relation to our children, all of our children, regardless of who their parents voted for, they're eligible. These are our kids, the kids of our country. So they will get $19,000 per child. Their families will get that. Harman and the others took that away they took away the $10,000 that people were getting, the kids were getting. So this shedding of crocodile tear. I saw him go to Blackbush to to some bottom house, the one that you're talking about, and said, oh, Jagdeo and the Prime Minister said there will be a second round of COVID assistance. Now what we said, that the pink slip misrepresenting us, that we would look, once we've gone through the first round, then we'll come back and do the pink slip. That's the second phase, the second round. So the first round, over $7 billion, nearly $8 billion went into the pockets of over 300 and something thousand families in the country. And we have 40,000 more now of the pink slip, which would result in $1 billion more being given out. That has just started to go to 40,000 households more. But he is now complaining, oh, you're not getting the second round. A guy who, they were in office, they didn't give a cent. In fact, they took all the money. And Harman knows a lot about taking money from the Treasury and from individuals. And if he knows what I mean. So they took the money for themselves. Now he goes to their supporters and he's outraged that you're not getting a second round. He should be happy that the PPP government chose to give people close to $10 billion weeks after, starting months after it got into office, when you left us with $90-something billion of borrowing from the central bank on the domestic market alone. The real economy outside of oil, all the sectors were in trouble. And that's what you left us with, no plan for the future. And you should be happy that we gave so many, over 350,000 of our households would get a grant from the government. Oh, that's not enough. We want a second round now, which he didn't do in office because they were busy hustling for themselves. And so he said also, at the same meeting, he said that, you know, the whistleblowing, the racist whistleblowing. So it's becoming so obvious now because they don't recognize that they're being caught. So it was Amanza Desir saying Indo-Guyanese are mentally lazy. Now Harman goes to an area now and in a bottom house, in a whisper campaign says, the PPP is saying that all Afro-Guyanese are thieves. It's not true. They're mischaracterizing what happened because of the cases that we filed against Lowenfield and some of the others. Lowenfield and Brooks and Myers and the others. Everybody knows they tried to steal the elections. So everybody. But it was the court, the Chief Justice, who is also Afro-Guyanese, that ruled against the petition. That's not nowhere. The PPP would be extremely stupid to make such a statement. And it's factually untrue. But he's misleading people because he knows what's coming because of a few of them, Afro-Guyanese and Indo-Guyanese in the last government, who raped the Treasury. It had nothing to do with race. It had to do with elitism. And ordinary Afro-Guyanese, including the ones he was speaking to, never benefited. But he's trying to hide it. Or when we go take legal action against a few of the hustlers, the thieves, that we're saying it's Afro-Guyanese, all Afro-Guyanese. That's totally stupid. You have good people and bad people in every race. You have hustlers and great people in every race in the world. How can you make such a stupid statement? But he, as part of their campaign, is trying to whisper in the bottom houses, spread the racism. He has nothing else. This guy doesn't know basic stuff. He goes to talk about the oil and gas sector, can't answer a basic question from the reporters, blunders. He has no track record on the environment. He was also the focal point here. He blunders again on the mangrove. He blundered on the common external tariff, misleading people every single day. That's what he does. And he does this, I suspect, in these bottom houses because he's campaigning for the leadership of their party.
Dr. Jagdeo, as a result of the continuous blunders by the opposition, some opposition members and supporters have reached out to me and have begun to worry if the failing of the PNC will see the PPP or this country becoming a one-party state, and what then?
It could never be a one-party state. We are, because we have freedom and we need to safeguard that. Not freedom for PPP, but freedom for every child, born and unborn. That is why the fight to retain our democracy was not just a PPP fight. You know, many people joined that in, and many people agreed, although they may have supported APNU, disagreed with the taking away of our freedom. So our rights, freedom, etc. would allow every citizen the right to organize a party or to have political representation of their choosing. We want people to judge us on our track record. I can list, in spite of the difficulties that we've had over the years, I can list 100 transformative things we've done for the country that has changed Guyana. From the early period when we were below Haiti in terms of per capita income, I can list 100. They would have a hard time listing 5. APNU would have a hard time. That is what I want people to look at us. We want to make the PPP more attractive. I told the populace before the elections, when I was leader of the opposition, that our job is to ensure more Afro-Guyanese would come into the PPP. This is as General Secretary of the party. As head of the PPP, that is one of my tasks. As Vice President, I look at policy issues, etc. But one of my tasks is to see that our party looks like the country. Our party believes so. It is a party for all races. Our party for young people. So I saw Hamilton Green saying that the old people from all the parties should leave, right? And get young people. We should get some young people in the parties. You check the leadership of the PPP. We have had more than half of our the leaders of the PPP. These are the members of the Central Committee. Are young people. We managed to get them in. Look at the government. The government is made up of a lot of young, bright people, but not just young. They also have years of experience because we exposed them from very young. Irfan Ali, when he came into my government as a minister, he was probably in his 20s or early 30s. Ashni Singh, all of these guys came in very early. They're young and they had experience. Now, so you have many years of them bringing to bear youth, but also some experience. Contrast that with APNU's behavior. Which young person in the last 5 years did they expose in government to policy making? Not one. So even if you put a young person now, they don't have a policy making experience. And also because their own party shafted them, has the rhetoric of talking about young people, is very loud on rhetoric, but very sparse on action in relation to young people. We live that every day. Our party, I'm looking for another set of young leaders to now, because Freedom House, some have moved on, another set of young leaders to groom for the future, the next wave of young people in the party. And constantly we are looking for that and exposing them. APNU has done a disservice to young people, excluded them totally. Those young people have a better future with us than with PNC, because they'll always exclude them. So look at those who are running for leadership now. Norton has been spent up 100 years ago. He's been spent. He's been around through and have been mediocre from the beginning. Mediocre in every single regard. So he is now one of the candidates for leadership of the party. And I suspect Norton is not on his own. Norton works with Harman out of Harman's office. I think he's a front just to bolster Harman's chances, so that what will happen is that he will probably throw in his support behind Harman sometime as you get closer or around at Congress, to exclude others who may be willing, to take away, who are dissatisfied with Harman and Granger. He will draw their support rather than another candidate who wants to challenge Harman, drawing them, and then eventually he will swing that support to Harman. He's not on his own, but he is mediocre. He said, oh, the only thing the PPP understands is protest. Well, they said that at the beginning. I recall Mr. Hoyt, and who was a much more charismatic leader than the entire lot, saying that 6 months the PPP wouldn't last. And Mr. Hoyt led protests of 5,000 persons. I listened to him. I sat in the same room. We worked together on many issues. A much smarter leader than him. And Mr. Corbyn too. I find that he's much more grounded, but none of the actions displays the PPP. They tried protests, they tried the stealing elections, but before, not only in the last election, they were always trying to tamper with the electoral process. They supported the criminal elements who unleash a rampage on this country, including a rampage on the people of Buxton, and took over their communities. The people of Buxton should never forgive APNU PNC for what they did to their communities. They unleashed that criminal rampage, hoping it will bring us to our knees. They tried through constitutional maneuvering, through all sorts, election petition. You remember the several that they filed. And none of those issues displaced us, except free and fair elections in 2015. So if you see, Norton comes from the old school that has long been discredited. Oh, he thinks he can bully the PPP by protesting. So that is his platform. I'm the man for the party because I can protest. Not that I can draft a plan to uplift the country and the people of this country, all the people of this country, including my supporters, get them better paying jobs and a house and all the things that are necessary, world-class education and health care and safety in their homes. He's not worried about that. His campaign platform, I can protest more than any other leader. That is how poor a party is if you don't have ideas, you don't have vision. You can only campaign around what you can do, protest and fight the PPP. You have nothing to offer. Nothing whatsoever to offer. This is the 21st century. And so that is what is happening in that party.
Dr. Jagdeo, with the Congress of the PNC coming up, I think there's no better person to answer this question than yourself, being a former president, former finance minister, opposition leader who brought or worked tirelessly to bring this government back, the PPP back to government, and now vice president. Can you, since I think those qualities would afford us some insight into a political understanding that is unique to you in the Caribbean, by the way, can you say where do you see the PNC in the future of Guyana?
It depends on the leaders and if they can rise to the occasion. That is what I'm saying. Right now in the current crop, particularly with what I see, Joseph Harman and Norton and the others, they don't have the vision, the experience, the policy making experience, or the love for their own people, much less the people of Guyana. You have to love this country to want to do something that way. You have to love this country and its people. And in spite of all they say about the PPP, we have that. We want to see every single Guyanese, all of our people, race-wise and religion-wise and gender-wise, we want to see all of them progress. And they don't, that's lacking now. So I'm hoping that a party would evolve that is national in outlook, that doesn't go and box itself into the bottom house whisper campaign about race, that will purge itself of the leaders who promote racism every single day, racism and protest as the only path forward, that would have that is willing to engage. Maybe if such a party were to emerge, then we have, and that is democratic in orientation, that will not try to steal elections, then we can work together. We can work together. I will commit the PPP to working with such a party in the future. But a lot depends on them. A party where you can engage in good faith, where you don't have to worry about someone just at the first sign of trouble, that they will go back to the narrow racism that they're accustomed to. That is what a party we would like to engage with in the future. Because we do want to engage with other political forces for the good of this country. And people talk about power sharing and all of that. If such a party were to emerge, then that's the party that you can work with in a single government. But if you have a single government, or as they're calling for executive power sharing, how do you work with somebody that you can't trust, that they would undermine everything that is pure and lofty and that needs to be done for the people of this country?
Dr. Jagdeo, at the fast rate that the AFC is dissolving, it's disintegrating, do you think that is responsible in part for the falling back of the PNC presently? Do you think that plays a role?
I don't think so. I think it's the AFC, in spite of what it said, it shares the same undemocratic philosophy like the APNU. It was Ramjatan and Nagamutu and all of the others, and Patterson and Cathy Hughes, God help us, were just as vocal about stealing elections than as Harman or one of the others from the PNC.
So you're suggesting they're one and the same?
One and the same. That's why they flocked together. They misled a lot of people that they were a real third force, and that could be a balancing force, and that had these lofty national ideas, and that they were above issues of race, etc. Some of the biggest racists are in that party.
Have you seen, has the PPP seen a lot of people approach you? For instance, a lot of people have approached me because we frequently do interviews. People somehow have the assumption that we'll talk every day or whatever.
Yeah.
But people say, man, I want to go back. I want to go back to the PPP. I want to talk to the vice president. I want to tell him I made a mistake. Many people meet me. Has the PPP seen a resurgence of people wanting to come back from the AFC?
Huge, and it happened before the elections too. And I want to say, as I sat there as opposition leader, many people came to see me, including many Afro-Guyanese. And their biggest concern was because they bought into this APNU propaganda that PPP will discriminate against you. And they asked me, if the PPP were to win, we don't like what's happening in our country with APNU, would you discriminate? And I said to them, look, you've seen us for 23 years in office. And you've seen, in spite of all they said, that the public service wasn't ethnically cleansed as they were trying to portray it. When we left office, Afro-Guyanese were still predominantly in the private sector at every level. And it will continue to be so. And we intend to keep, or I want to say to all those people who may be watching today, that I still keep that foremost in my head, the conversations we have. And in my job, you just mentioned the positions I've had. I'm General Secretary of the party and also in the government. And so every day we'll be conscious about that all the people of our country progress, and we will ensure that our policies allow that to happen, because their voices resonate in my head too. And many Indo-Guyanese who have left came, and others who have left, and they came back, and they were welcome back because they thought that the others had a more lofty goal, national philosophy. And they recognized the others, that the APNU or the AFC misled them. And so we now too in government, a lot of people have come, and we will find a way of working with everyone, including those who were very visible on the APNU AFC campaign. There are a few people who have approached me, and they're willing because they want to serve their country, and they will be welcome to. We have a big tent approach, and we'll find opportunities to engage those people because they have a right to choose. And if they want to choose the party, I say to them, you'd have a chance to see how we operate when you're working with us, that the rumors you hear are false.
Dr. Jagdeo, 55 years on in politics in this country, has seen politicians getting off lightly, people affiliated with politician family members and so getting off lightly, clearly suggesting political interference in the judiciary and so on in the past. The judicial system seems to be working effectively, so much so that it has taken Lowenfield one step closer basically to prison. Since he's been charged, the SOPs, it is a clear case that once the SOPs are made public, it will be seen and there will be no turning back. There will be no other alternative but to see Keith Lowenfield, CEO for GCOM, being imprisoned as a result of what he did and his cohorts. Can you reassure Guyanese, or can you tell us what that looks like in the future? Because no matter what, people with political affiliations have gotten off.
Yes, so the philosophy is that we cannot go after everyone. But there are some acts that were particularly egregious that we have to ensure that the full force of the law is brought to bear on those matters so that there be an example set for people who try to undermine what is sacred in this country, our democratic values and our freedoms. And Lowenfield Roxanne Myers, and Mingo, they fall in that category. They put this country through an unusual level of turmoil. They breach all of their statutory responsibilities, and they did so with impunity. So I agree with you that once people have the SOPs, you recall APNU hid the SOPs. They never made public their SOPs. We published ours. And the reason now could be very apparent to everyone why they hid the SOPs, because the real SOPs showed that they lost the elections. Now Harman will be they lost the petition, but now they're criticizing the Chief Justice. So he still speaks about installed regime. This fraud, because he tried to thief the elections, for want of a better word. The Harman and a few others. So, and he has the audacity to talk about installed regime. So now that the SOPs will be made public that Lowenfield had, these are always in Lowenfield's custody, and now they would be given to the police and hopefully be made public, he will have a hard time to explain that when Mingo used the fraudulent SOPs to declare the Region 4 results, why he did not object to it, because he had the real SOPs. And then he sought, in spite of having the SOPs that match the statements of recall, the statements of poll that match the statements of recall, he still persisted in using the fraudulent declaration of Mingo to declare the results. So you're absolutely right. He is in a very invidious position now, and this will probably be a mountain of evidence against him now that the SOPs are available to the prosecutors for him to overcome. But the audacity of the guy, he then took Nigel News to try to block the release of the SOPs, which is a public document. So the PNC was part of this. They knew what was going on. And Harman and the others, not a single, up to today, they can't say where their SOPs were. Ask Harman, they're probably in the safe that Harman has in this office here, at the office of the president. You know, we can put out a reward for it. You want to bet Harman and the others will never release their SOPs for Region 4 that they have in their possession, because they know they lost the elections. They tried to hustle the elections. And so you're right. So that category. Now there are others that you've seen, we've settled some cases. And there are others, these deal with their state assets. We are in the period of recovering state assets and also taking action against individuals. So we have clear cases of culpability. The Minister of Finance, he signed a vesting order transferring by title lands to people who never paid for their lands. And they're supposed to pay, in one case, some $900 million. And he gave them the title. They didn't pay a cent. The people said, we don't want the land too, and he still transferred it to them. Though that, you would have full prosecution. You would have to go to court and tell to the court how he transferred land. Ashley Singh and Brassington were charged for transferring land that they received payment, right, and small quantities of land, tiny bit, 5 acres of land. In this case, it's 30 acres. And they were acting pursuant to a public process and a cabinet decision. Cabinet had already approved it. and they were charged by APNO and AFC and put in handcuffs and chained and taken before the courts. Jordan and the others transfer enormous amount of properties. Trevor Ben, he sold land that didn't belong to Lands and Survey, and he had no authority to sell because President Granger didn't give him the authority to sell in the gazetted order of his responsibilities. So a lot of that, and now if we go after them, they would claim discrimination. But a lot of the beneficiaries and people who were involved with these people were Indo-Guyanese too. So a lot of the lands and stuff like that, the transactions were corrupt, and you had Indo-Guyanese involved in them too. So it's not an Afro-Guyanese thing, but they will, some of them will have to pay the, face the law.
Will the PPP...
They face the law. Look how many times we were invited to Soku. Prime Minister Sam Hines had to go. Ramatar, I think, had to go to Soku. Roger Luncheon had to go to Soku. I had to go to Soku. Almost every minister of the cabinet of the PPP were in Soku. And they didn't find a shred of evidence, not for Soku or Sarah, to come up with charges that that could have had a prosecution. They were just frivolous. We're not talking about frivolous things. I told you why and what law it breaches. I gave you a couple of examples. So we are not rushing after charging everybody willy-nilly. We haven't called Soku and said, oh, every member of the other side must be charged, etc. They had a case against Norton, and we recognized that Norton acted pursuant to the cabinet, George Norton, and we're dropping that case too. It doesn't make sense prosecuting George Norton for something that, that the cabinet had ordered him to do. This is on the drug bond issue.
So the PPP has learned from mistakes that the PLC would have made.
Yes, because...
by charging people who would have had directions from cabinet.
Yes, because that is what it was. It was pursuant to a cabinet decision. Pursuant to a cabinet decision. But George Norton was a pawn. No use we drag Mr. George Norton through the cold, because we don't have an enemy image like what they did. Go after all the PPP leaders, which they did. Like, Nigel Darmla was charged for because there was he was a member of the board, and the Rice board didn't update the general ledger. So he was charged as a member of the board, which is a function of management. That is how it was vindictive in orientation. And you remember the celebration by Ramjatan when we were taking to Soku and stuff like that. He and Settlinton and the others were celebrating. So we're not in a celebratory mood when they get charged. We only gonna go after people who will. So the Minister of Finance, the head of Lands and Survey, in the future they will know that you have fiduciary responsibility, that you have to act in accordance with the law. They breached the law. We found nearly $1 billion missing in fuel from the army. We're gonna go after that. Gael was a cesspool with billions of dollars were stolen there. We have to go after that too. The thing about recycling duty-free, already some big companies were involved in this. Sol was involved in recycling duty-free letters, runs into billions of dollars. We are going to go after those things, but it's not a witch hunt, because we want to make sure that we're busy fixing people's problems too, and let the justice system proceed.
Dr. Jagdeo, what happened directly after March the 2nd last, actually in some terms adds up to organized crime? And when you look at how organized crime is dismantled in developed countries, somebody squeals. in layman terms, if Lowenfield was to come and say, here, I'm going to tell you all how this thing happened, who are involved and so on, would your administration, through the Minister of Legal Affairs, be willing to allow him to cop a plea?
Well, the thing is that I know people can become state witness, right? So, but that has to be arranged with the Director of Public Prosecution, not with Nandalal or anyone else. They can become state witness, and then in exchange for that, the DPP has the authority to ask for leniency on their part. So this amendment was made in the law, and so if Mr. Lowenfield wants to squeal on some people, then he is free to approach the Director of Public Prosecution on this matter. So that is how I see it.
Dr. Jagdeo, I know you have some other appointments to deal with and dealing with the issues in flooding and so on. What do you want, in closing, what do you want to leave with Guyanese? Since we do this very frequently, but what do you want to leave with Guyanese for the short period of time now?
So I'm saying, stay positive. Don't listen to the daily gripe of this opposition. They have no plan for the future. They are just misleading people for selfish purposes. The hustlers are now trying to become the saints. So I can see people like Patterson and what's the one, Ferguson, now lecturing on probity and good governance and how to avoid corruption in places, you know. So it's almost laughable. It's almost laughable. So please don't pay attention to this. Use the opportunities fully. There'll be opportunities for your children to learn more, you to get help from the government. When that help comes along, take it, make it the full use of it. With the 19,000 per child. Soon, before the end of the year, we're working on some more assistance to targeted groups, pensioners, etc. Please utilize that. The pensioners utilize the money for their upliftment. Pensioners, people on public assistance, etc. Another set. The scholarship programs, utilize them fully. Don't listen to those who already have scholarships. Like, how callous can you be when you have a scholarship paid for by the government, like several of the ministers and their children, worth nearly $100 million Guyana dollars for them and their children, and they're not even Guyana scholars doing first degrees abroad, and then go and say to people, oh, don't take the government scholarship, this is just a campaign to. That is what they're doing. So you make sure you use the scholarship fully. There will be lots of programs to start small business as soon as we emerge from this pandemic and we also get past this rainy period and stuff like that. We'll do that. You know, engage. Like I know a number of people have engaged the government. People came from Blackbush Polder about the state of the road, from Canal number 1, number 2, King Grove. The people from Mahaica and King Grove, the road is in a bad shape. We have already set aside money to do a lot of these roads because APNU neglected almost all the roads in areas where PPP strongholds were. Neglected the roads completely. We wouldn't operate like that, but engage, make full use. And you have a government that would listen, a minister that would listen, call, try to get receptive ear from the regional level, etc. You have to be active if you want to change your own lives. Nobody will do it for you. But we are trying to create the opportunities. The same thing on oil and gas, on employment, etc. Make full use of all the opportunities. Don't listen to this negative all the time, because that's how the country will change.
Dr. Jagdeo, on a lighter note, I was reliably informed this was the office of Joseph Harmon before they left office. And there's a back room with a huge safe. And since you are using this office, what do you use that safe
Well,
for?
I recently moved here because the floor across there, the other side, is sinking, it's collapsing. So I had to move over here temporarily. I don't know what the safe and the other things were being used
So
for.
you don't use the safe?
No, I don't use the
What
safe.
do you think a minister of government would have with a big safe?
Well, you know Mr. Harmon, and we've heard a number of stories. And I know some of the stories are confirmed because, frankly speaking, people tell us that he has a likeness for a son. And you know, and he knows what I'm talking about because the people are squealing now. All of them now who had to pay for favor in government, they're coming forward and talking. We're in government now, so they're telling us what they had to pay and who they had to pay and what they got and what they didn't get. And it's appalling. It's shocking. And I think many who are in opposition now, they miss that dearly. They miss that dearly. So the one thing about taking bribes in this country is that it doesn't stay secret very long. We have people who are talkative. We have people who are talkative. You know, the Guyanese, they go at their rum shop or elsewhere, or they meet you, and especially if they believe you have a position, now they squeal. They tell you about everything under the sun. And so we are hearing everything. We're hearing everything, and we think we know where a lot of skeletons are buried. We'll be digging them up soon.
Thank you again, once again, Dr.
Right.
Jagdeo, and I hope you could do this in light of transparency of the PPP administration and willingness to be open and forthcoming with the people and working together to develop a greater Guyana. Thanks once again.
Thank you. Thank you.